feels like, there are some prospects that made it to campus here recently, spring game thereabouts or shortly after, that they're trending up with. Nichols is one of them, but there was a kid before that who came to campus, and you said, if I had a crystal ball, I would throw my crystal ball in for him right now. You've been talking about this kid for quite some time.
Yes, Deyvid Palepale, a kid that's probably about a half hour away from me. So like I was telling Brice before we went on the air, this is a kid that I saw twice during the football season. First game was early on in the year against Dallas Town. I then saw him again versus Exeter, which had the tight end Joey Schaefer going to Penn State, four-star tight end. And so that's when I first noticed him, knew that he was going to be a big-time player. He didn't know that at the time because we really, really went on to discuss it. At that time, he only had a Penn State offer. This is in the fall. Things have obviously changed. And so he went on to visit Michigan, and the kid has just been nonstop raving about his experience. And I didn't expect that because it was only just a one-day visit, but he was like, hey, it was action-packed from start to finish, never a dull moment. And the Wolverines just became a mighty contender, his recruit.
So you think they lead? Because here's the thing. There was a lot of talk about Penn State. That Penn State was out front, which makes sense, right? I mean, Penn State, they should rule the state. I don't know if Pitt is giving them any smoke now, but interesting thing with Penn State. Hey man, hey look, shout out to Archie Collins. Archie does work over there with Pitt. So anyway, getting back over to Deyvid Palepale. There was a whole lot of Penn State talk with him, Brice, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. But an interesting thing, and this might apply to Dominic Nichols too, because there was some Penn State talk with him. But they got a new defensive line coach, because John Scott is not with Penn State anymore. He's with the Detroit Lions. And you look for openings, right? You look for ways to kind of wedge yourself into certain recruitments, and that just seems like a particularly big opening when recruiting against Penn State, recruiting defensive linemen against Penn State right now. And they're trending up in a very nice way with Deyvid Palepale right now.
I would absolutely agree. Plus, you got to remember, he's not a homegrown talent. He's only been here for about, I think, 3 or 4 years at the most. So he's not your normal in-state kid that has that loyalty to Penn State that's attached to the brand. I've probably seen him do several interviews. He's been asked about this. Do you want to stay home and play for Penn State? Is that a big-time factor? He never said yes. Never said yes. And more importantly, when he made these visits, his mom went on the last visit to Michigan with him. And that was big because she came away saying that Michigan is her number one school. That's her favorite school. Mm-hmm. So if mom likes it, what does that tell you?
Yeah, hey man, you're ahead of the game. It's not a guarantee, right? But if mom likes it, you're in really, really good shape. Listen, if what mom wanted really was the be-all, end-all, there's a whole lot more prospects Michigan would have had, right? I mean, Malik McDowell, right? Yes. I mean, there are plenty of moms.
There's a bunch of those.
There's a bunch of those moms that they won, right? Yeah. But it didn't quite work out to get the kid. But maybe this will be one of the other kind where you win the mom, you win the kid, because they definitely seem to be trended up. And then he comes away from that visit like, hey man, I got to come back for OV, right?
Yeah, he was so fired up. And I waited a few days after speaking to him on Friday, after speaking to him on Saturday. I waited a little bit, see if it wore off, And he was like, man, this thing just has a hold on me that I cannot shake. Like, I love it there. Love it. You don't see too many recruits saying, I love it there after a one-day visit. He's never been there previously. So I knew this was big. And then when he said, this is mom's favorite school, that was big.
Yeah, I feel about this particular ranking, Brice, kind of how I felt about Blake Frazier. We were talking about how he's an 88, right? And Steve even said last week, I just think it's just a matter of the scouts getting more eyes on him. I think the same thing with Deyvid Palepale, maybe even more so when you consider his offer. I mean, his offer list is ridiculous. You got SC, you got Tennessee, you got Oklahoma, you got Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Florida, Auburn, Penn State. I mean, you hear offer lists like that, Brice. That doesn't sound like a 3-star number 613 in the country 88 guy. Not to me anyway.
Is that what he's ranked as?
Yeah. But it takes sometimes it takes some time for the scouts to get eyes on some guys, right, Brice?
Got you.
He's from Alaska, so we know how many scouts out in Alaska. You know what I'm saying?
Brandon Huffman gets up to Alaska sometimes, right?
Right. I mean, I think here's the thing about him too. He's essentially nose tackle. I know Gene and us, we were talking, and they were playing him at defensive end. So I don't know. It's tough to evaluate a guy when he's kind of playing out of position. I think this season he's going to be playing obviously more inside and interior, but he's 6'3". I want to say he's over 300 pounds. It's just tough to. And at that point, it's tough to evaluate those type of guys because there's not many. You know what I'm saying? There's just not many of those guys, especially in the Midwest. So when you do have them, like a Justice Scott, you kind of have to go after them kind of hard. And this is what you're seeing. And Sam, to your point, regardless of the ranking, look at the offer sheet.
Yeah, man.
He just picked up Florida. He's going to pick up a couple more, I'm hearing. I mean, this is a guy that's about to blow up.
What do you think about him as a talent, Gene? I just gave his offer list, but what do you think about his game? Like, how good do you think he can be?
I think that he's a four-star talent all day long. When he is able to play inside, he causes havoc. Like I said, I saw him against Dallas Town, and I mean they couldn't get a pass off. It was to that point, it felt like the water boy just rushing through the line. They couldn't get a pass off. He was causing major havoc. And like I said, when they went up against a bigger opponent, and I did talk to his coach about it, they love his flexibility, so he plays all along the line. And so I just think that where you put him in a spot where he can hone in, he does have some pass rush skills, just needs a little bit of coaching. But when you put him in a spot where that's his position, that's the focus, I think sky's the limit. I think he's a big-time player, probably top 5 in the state of Pennsylvania.